Ceramics as a means of expression in the 21st century. Practical and decorative objects made out of clay for any conditions. A Ukrainian sculptor who works with ancient material. UATV visited the ceramic workshop, which should become a hub for creative people. The giant on clay legs, a famous metaphor from the Old Testament text, tarnished the reputation of this material and made many people consider it slight and unreliable. According to biblical tradition, this image came in a dream to the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. This image had a head of pure gold. The chest and hands were of silver. The belly and thighs were copper. The legs were of iron and clay. As you can see, clay is opposed to very strong metals, but it was almost never used in its pure form for construction, only in combination with other materials. In ancient times, clay was about the same as plastic is for people of today. It was affordable, easily took the desired shape, was water-resistant, and retained the temperature. The majority of ancient artifacts from ancient times are made of clay, and these include the famous Sumerian Tablets, the first material in the history of writing. With proper firing, it became quite strong and durable, while remaining light. This is well known to designers of space shuttles, who created protective ceramic plates from massive temperatures when entering the atmosphere. There are so many ways of working with clay that it still remains an ideal material for creative expression. I study ceramic art and conduct courses and master classes. Viktor Khristenko is a ceramic sculptor with a focus on the first word. In his workshop, he checks the clay for strength, creating unusual shapes and surfaces. Viktor often looks for help from modern technologies when working with ancient material. In order to go beyond the generally accepted framework of ceramics, we use new inventions and modern media. For example, in order to create such panels, we use a projector and use patterns that are already ready. How did a street artist from Donetsk open a ceramic workshop in Kiev? Why doesn't he use a potter's wheel? And what is unique about these air clay sculptures? Watch our program to discover all the secrets of this master. The Venus of Dolny Vistonice is the oldest clay statuette ever found. This is the characteristic image of the Mother Goddess. The height of the Venus of Dolny Vistonice is just 11 centimeters and it is about 4.5 centimeters wide. Archaeologists believe that the statuette is 23,000 to 30,000 years old. That is, an unknown sculptor lived in the Stone Age. During the tomographic study, scientists discovered an unexpected detail: the fingerprint of a child's hand, apparently left before firing. By chance, this child has become a part of human history. Viktor Khristenko had a similar dream in his childhood. When I was very small, I went to dig clay together with my grandfather. And when I picked up the clay in my hands and left my imprint, I realized that I can just bake the same imprint, throw it into the ground, and 200, 300 or 400 years later, someone will find this print, a piece of me. And they'll be able to say something about these times. Of course, there was no place to work with clay, but the parents of young Viktor provided him with Play-Doh and a place for creativity. I created locations, cities, images. All this was placed in our apartment. And quite often it was hard not to step on one of the works, which would leave it permanently imprinted in the carpet. It seemed that the choice was predetermined. Viktor studied at art school and made progress in sculpture. He even managed to become a student of the famous master of decorative art, Hero Hibero. His monumental works adorn Donetsk. However, after 10 years of study at the Faculty of Architecture at the university, Viktor didn't see any prospects for himself as a sculptor. Much has changed during this time, both in Viktor's life and in Ukraine as a whole. Donetsk was captured by militants who, with the support of Russia, broke the peaceful resistance of local residents. Viktor participated in pro-Ukrainian meetings, but they were cruelly dispersed and he moved to Kiev. At that time, just the sculptures from the master without the big name were of no interest to anyone. But what if everyday objects with sculptural elements are created? And what if the stereotypes about the forms that clay can take are destroyed? This was how the personal style of Viktor Khristenko developed. The principle that was originally taken from ancient times is that the form is always on the table. I wanted to move away from it. I wanted to add lightness to ceramics. And on the one hand, I worked on the form. I created such spatial sculptures. Light is also one of the parts of the same lightness. Having created these ideas, Viktor managed to raise interest in a sufficiently wide audience, which led him to open this workshop. Today, especially for UATV, the ceramist sculptor shows what unique devices he has invented for working with clay and whether it's easy to learn his technique. With regard to working with clay, then only at the potter's wheel. Mass culture, especially cinema, has firmly embedded this stereotype. But the sculptor doesn't need this device, since with all the convenience, it seriously limits artistic solutions. The potter's wheel is associated with the forms of rotation. A sculpture makes it possible to work three-dimensionally with an object. Pottery and sculpture in ceramics are combined only with material, nothing more. For his forms, Viktor uses strong clay, which is mined and produced in Ukraine, not far from Donetsk itself, in the city of Slovyansk. One of the best kinds of clay in existence. Italians and Spaniards also buy it from us, so we have a very good source here. It doesn't crack, it dries well, it has a fairly high melting point, but at the same time, it is in porcelain. Chamot clay is not the soft material from which, for example, dishes are made. A large amount of burnt ceramic particles is added to it at the plant. These particles provide strength, heat resistance, and reduce the shrinkage of the product, and it's convenient to work with. There are several techniques for working with clay. There is a way to work with the layers when one layer is rolled out, rolled into a cylinder or into a cone, and then we can work with it, transform, finish something, and so on. The second technique known to all young practicing enthusiasts is sausage modeling. This technique enables the creation of the necessary shape in a similar fashion to how 3D printers operate. Viktor, however, prefers a more free and complex technique. This technique is clips work, and it involves tearing off pieces of clay and adding onto the layer as if skirting around it. Our fingers work as guides. In other words, the layer is molded in the direction of our fingers. Depending on what we want to do, we use tools like fettling knives, modeling spatulas, and wire. That is exactly how this lamp from the collection called Weightlessness is made. Despite the fact that the object is still attached to a horizontal surface, its body resembles coral and is riddled with tiny holes that give it visual lightness. That's Viktor's fantasy on the topic of water. It is bent to the form in which it is poured. That is, whether it is a sea or a glass, it always repeats the bottom. These works are in fact about water in weightlessness. That is, I imagine how a drop of water or some volume of water in zero gravity can behave, and I work with it. Viktor is inspired by nature. Look at these magnificent whales. But how does a sculptor manage to mold a statuette without a flat point? At first, the animal's body is molded not by hand, but in the form of softer clay. A slightly different clay is used, so-called slip clay. It is poured into plaster molds. The plaster draws in water, and due to the fact that we withstand liquid clay inside the mold for an hour or more, depending on how much mass is poured, a wall near the gypsum is formed. The two hollow parts of the whale are joined together and placed in a cunning device, a special frame with pendants. All subsequent handwork begins here. The sculpture has no flat bottom or traces of temporary fixtures. This equipment allows you to turn objects on them, work from top to bottom, and push forward. If we work with the face, we just push the face forward on the same suspensions, or, if with the tail, then back. We do everything in a suspended state. Another one of Viktor's secret weapons is the projector. He has used it since street art. At present, the sculptor is creating a large clay moon. It will become the sign of the workshop. He projects the actual moon onto the panel for an easily readable resemblance to a celestial body. The projector allows you to apply it all very quickly. When working with ceramics, there is an additional bonus here, because at some point we can turn off the projector, just work in order to see what we do. At some point turn it on if we need help. That is, look at the composition. Perhaps some elements have been missed out. After the figure has dried, Viktor sends it to the first firing. For a well that will stand in an interior, 850 degrees Celsius is enough, while a street moon needs 1150 degrees for 4 to 5 hours. The higher the temperature, the stronger the crystal lattice will be, and the less will the clay be subsequently able to absorb moisture. After that, I sand it. If there are any rough spots on it, I sand it with sandpaper and glaze it over. In the case of whales, glaze is applied with a gradient spraying technique. In essence, it's the same as graffiti, but in ceramics. The sculptor spreads the glaze with water and covers the product with a spray gun, just like serious street artists do. The product coated with glaze needs to be burned again at a temperature of 1060 degrees Celsius for 12 hours. At the same time, unlike the first firing, the objects should not touch each other in the furnace. This usually takes about 2 weeks. If the order is large and diverse, Viktor works for several months, as it happened with one of the restaurants at the Black Sea resort. The client wanted to arrange an entire waterfall. There were panels, there were lamps in the waterfall, and there were ceiling lamps. There are also going to be another 4 planet panels. We also made decorative tiles, so there was a lot of work. Viktor Khristenko also joined forces with a lighting artist from the US and released a series of small RGB octopus lamps that constantly change color. The whales and other animals have already been sent all around the world. However, delivering such objects intact is fairly difficult, so Viktor has limited his foreign expansion for now. Right now, he is focused on teaching. Short workshops are aimed at acquainting people with unique features of ceramic arts. At the end, students get a whale they made themselves. Another project of Viktor is in-depth courses, the students of which work on their own designs. The sculptor says that all kinds of people become interested.
Ландшафтные дизайнеры, айтишники, архитекторы,
Landscape designers, IT specialists, architects. The circle is very wide. There are people who work in the office and they need a creative outlet, as they need to work on what they can do and hold in their hands. Because they work with numbers, they process information, so what they lack is a physical result of their work. Viktor Khristenko plans to expand and open such workshops outside Ukraine. At home, he set himself the goal of creating an art hub, where sculptors from different countries could come to a place where everything is ready for master classes, without the need to take clay and tools with them. I want to create an educational platform in Ukraine that would attract artists from all over the world, so they could come here and give classes, so that people could work in different cities, share their experience and create their own art objects, anything they want.
И создавать свои арт-объекты там, что угодно.
It's possible that thousands of years later, archaeologists might well find some of the works by the Ukrainian sculptor and realize that the art of the distant future rests on these whales.